Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel. We continue our World Class Championship Wrestling review series. We're into October of 1982. October 2nd is this particular episode. We move into the last quarter of the year, and World Class has certainly been an interesting journey for most of us. But we move into that with Wild Bill Irwin addressing David Von Erich to open the program. That is notable because the Von Erich family is one of the ones that finally do unseat him as the Texas champion. He's been the Texas champion for the better part of the year, not the entire year, but more of it than not, and that's a big deal. And so him addressing, thinking that Von Erich is tough, but he is tougher. That's the basic gist of everything that's said here, and certainly worth taking note of. Wild Bill, I would venture your MVP for 1982 in World Class. The Von Erich boys against King Kong Bundy, Arman Hussein, and Wild Bill Irwin, predecessor to the six-man tag team championship titles being introduced a couple of months from now, I think. I don't know that they necessarily had that in mind at this point, but they may. But to see all three Von Erich boys in the ring together as a unit, a big deal in Texas at the time. And Bundy, Hussein, and Irwin seem to be on the same page for the majority of this contest. Of course, Kerry is, at this point, about less than 3 months away from challenging Ric Flair in what ends up being a cage match. We'll get there in a while. But we see Kevin and Bill Irwin start out. Of course, they're kind of embroiled in a little mini feud of their own, eventually over the Texas Championship. David comes back in. David really hasn't found his feet yet because he's back from Florida for a bit. Irwin does the majority of the bumping and feeding for the majority of this match. Kerry, of course, doesn't really have a program outside of being the one that everybody thinks is going to go with Flair. So, Kerry and Flair seems to be the build. To think that this is 1982 and Kerry doesn't beat Flair for the NWA Championship until I believe the midpoint of 84. I know it's 84. I don't remember the exact date, but at least another year of build in that is it's amazing to me. I don't know that a multi-year program could even work in today's wrestling, even with the best bookers. And I don't think it's that it can't work. I just don't think bookers know how to tell those stories in a compelling way to draw it out. David looks good here, uses a lot of backdrops and just, more athletic maneuvers. Being the bigger of the Von Erichs is a big deal. They get a good, almost probably close to 12 to 15 minutes here. Arman Hussein takes a good bit of the punishment, but that makes sense. He's almost in what I would consider today's MVP role to be. A guy that can take a beating and always come back because he's a heater of a manager, and that's his role in life. We see the Von Erichs go well into 15 minutes. The body scissors that is usual for Kevin Von Erich primarily to use is used here. The heels do try to cut the ring off on Kevin. Kevin seems to be the more overall athletic, but everybody kind of just wandering around in there, and there are a couple points where the heels are in there in a multi-person on one Von Erich way. We do see all six men break down in there in a bit of a Donnybrook, which even with two referees is a bit much. Bundy is held in a sleeper hold at one point. Again, I don't understand, and I say this almost every review with Bundy, but I don't understand the concept of having King Kong Bundy as a major guy and then um, not, protecting him and keeping him away from looking weaker. The referees seem to call off the match as a bit of a time limit draw here, and nothing really gets terribly accomplished. Which, for putting 15 plus minutes into the match, might have been a letdown, but it also is a good return for things around the horn. Everybody leaves things. We do see a beautiful triple drop kick by the Von Erichs. Triple is in all three boys with the same move at the same time. We then move to Bugsy McGraw, who always seems to hold a second or third match, sometimes every once in a while main event, but he's on the card almost weekly. McGraw and Captain Frank Dusek here. Dusek starts the year as a manager, back to being primarily a wrestler here. But Bugsy McGraw always wearing something different. I'm not sure I necessarily understand the logic of finishes and episodic television in world class a lot of the time, because there's sometimes it's just movable parts of guys that don't really have major issues with each other, and I'm used to a territory that has more issues. They do a crisscross spot for comedy effect where Bugsy hits his belly and trips Dusek. Dusek is unimpressed with this. Fans are very impressed and having a good time, especially the kids. Bugsy obviously meant to target the children, so even in 1982 they're doing that. Bugsy goes out to the ring, gets a drink, and kind of is taking a bit of a pause for the cause, and the drink goes in the face of good old Dusek here as Bugsy sends him over the top rope to the floor and kind of celebrates being able to dominate. And the official makes his way to the outside. Bugsy, of course, gets the victory here, but to see a guy in a striped bumblebee-looking T-shirt and a pair of gym shorts on a wrestling program, who would have thunk in 1982? So for those that are super geeky about gear, sometimes not everyone has to wear gear consistently. It's preferable, but not necessary. So we move into a, I guess you'd say, semi-main event position tag team matchup. Al Madril and the Samoan versus Magic Dragon and Great Kabuki. Gary Hart kind of endorsing his role for his team, endorsing the coming of, or the continued prominence of Magic Dragon, Kabuki, Checkmate, and all of his stars. Interesting that the majority of Gary Hart's stars are of Asian descent. We even see that in the NWA with Great Muta, so it's kind of interesting there. But Kabuki and Dragon are a regular team. Dragon wearing a bit of a silver mask, so he originally was I think he was Black Dragon for a while, if I remember correctly, but Magic Dragon here. Kabuki, of course, always wearing the face paint, doing the mist, and kind of being mysterious, as it were. We also will see Checkmate in the main event with Brian Adias, but the Samoan has a good showing for himself here in the latter part of 1982. Kabuki always bringing him back to his feet with strikes and the like, but even here the Samoan is doing a good bit of selling. The heels and members of H&H Incorporated cut the ring off quite a bit easily on him. Madril makes his way into the ring, obviously much more a brawling style. The team of Magic Dragon and Kabuki do leave the Samoan laying. due to his inexperience before we move on to our main event of the evening, which Gary Hart is, unsatisfied with having to get into the ring. He thinks that everyone is trying to cause his men trouble. But Checkmate, the European champion and European standout, does have a very interesting match, and if you like more mat-based style, you will enjoy Checkmate. Also, Brian Adias, who is a friend of the Von Erichs and a relative newcomer within the last few months here, hangs with Checkmate quite well throughout the early stages of the match, doing some classic wrestling holds, transitions, and, Checkmate trying to stay towards maybe working a body part, working an arm, with Adias, able to hold his own in that type of situation. He even nails some basic maneuvers like a hip toss, drop kick, and the like, always coming up and looking strong. So it's clear that they do have longer term plans for him. However, Checkmate always seems to return to being the better man on the mat, as is the case, and the Checkmate tries to break things down into a mat-based style where he has what he, I guess, would perceive to be the advantage. Checkmate is victorious. We see a gut buster, among other things, before he does take the victory. It's amazing to me that sometimes your main event matches here in World Class, and you even see a torpedo headbutt. So a lot of moves with the Checkmate are moves that we come to know, more certainly here. But a sloppy powerbomb is the way he finishes the match. I say sloppy because normally a powerbomb, you lift him kind of high. Checkmate just kind of does almost a roll-through level powerbomb. But gains the victory anyway as we move into the, midpoint of the month of October. Up next, Wild Bill Irwin says he knows that more trouble is going to come from the Von Erichs, and he doesn't like it. But we're gonna see him defend the Texas Gold in the upcoming weeks. But until next time, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.